Joining us now here on In the Circle on D1 Softball, powered by 643. It's our annual get-together with her. She has been on this podcast now, and we're actually pretty coming up on 5-year anniversary of her first appearance on the podcast when she worked the Tallahassee Regional the week of in 2021. She is, of course, an analyst on ACC Network. She'll be part of the coverage of the ACC tournament this next week in Charlottesville alongside Alex Powers, as they'll be out in Charlottesville, part of the studio crew, with Taylor Tannenbaum. And, of course, you see her on studio. She'll be in studio Saturday night this week on ACC Network. Get you set for all ACC. Alex and Britt have an ACC podcast as well. She was a former standout at North Carolina. I speak of Brittany McKinney joining us here on In the Circle at D1 Softball. Hello.
Eric, it's so good to be with you every week. I listen to you every week, so now it's nice to talk to you.
That is correct. Ditto. It is. I do need to mention Alex is taking a break, and she has earned this break because she has called, I think, 64 games this year, and about 45 of those are with me. So she needs a break from me. That is why she is not on this podcast. But she's yours now the rest of the year, Brett.
Oh, well, I think you both could have a little break from each other. Right? I'll take it from here. I'll take Alex from here.
Fair. It's fair now. We care. Let's talk about this year of the ACC. To me, it's been the wackiest year I can remember of any major conference. I've lost count of how many times on the podcast me and Vic have had to either alter the podcast or wait on the podcast based on an ACC game on Sunday that went haywire, or a team involving an ACC team on a midweek. How would you describe this year for the ACC?
I mean, you're exactly right. Every week it's like, all right, what game's going to be the crazy one? What series is going to be the crazy one? And as soon as I feel like I kind of have a pulse on a team or the conference as a whole, something just goes haywire. I mean, it's just, and Stanford's been a lot involved in a lot of those, but I mean, like North Carolina has two, Georgia Tech, Virginia. I mean, it's just, you go down the standings and make an argument for each team. Like, what in the world? Duke starting 9-9. I mean, it's just like, we got to keep up every week. Nothing's a given.
It's not, and it makes you wonder if what we're in store for here in Charlottesville at Virginia. Tell us a little bit about that facility at Virginia and what people can expect with them hosting. We had Joanna Harden on the podcast earlier this year. They have been building towards this moment. That's a veteran group. I know the conference season hasn't gone maybe the way they would have liked, but still, they get to host. That's a big event for a lot of that group. And what are you expecting to see there?
Well, the Palmer Park I haven't been personally, but I'm very excited to be there. I know it's beautiful just from seeing it on TV. It's a big field. I think we're going to see a lot of doubles, more triples than we've seen. Obviously, home runs will happen because that's what we do in softball now. I know the ACC, our studio set up, we're going to have a desk. It's going to be a nice area right above the third baseline. So we'll be taken care of there. But when I played at Virginia, it was basically a rec field. Like, it was open to the public when they weren't practicing or playing. So having this beautiful stadium, I know Joanna Harden's excited to show it off. And then there are 5 seniors who have been like the foundation of Virginia, and elevating them each year are all from Virginia. So having them play at their home park, I think it's just going to be special in so many ways.
Take us behind the scenes. What's it like on a conference championship week for you, as you and as a crew as well? Obviously, how many ACC tournaments, if this will be this for you, covering now?
My first one was Pitt. It was me and Katie George solo doing the Pitt studio, and that was an interesting one with the weather and not really much space for us. But, we've been working on storylines all year long. This past week, we've been talking with our producer who's going to be there with us and sending in storylines and ideas. And we talked about how crazy the ACC has been. So there's no shortage of storylines and things to follow and things to know. Been working with research, looking at trends, just trying to get all our ducks in a row so we can tell the story of the teams as they get there. And it's just, this last weekend, we only have a handful of series going in. So there's a good look at what we're going to see, but definitely some things can change as these games play out. But, it's just prepping, getting to know these teams, and more than anything, it's just how they match up with each other. So when we get that final bracket, like, certain teams are going to match up better with other teams, even if they're, seated below them.
Nice name drop on Katie George. She's doing very well for herself. Since
Yes, she
you've
is.
had Katie George, you've had Kelsey Riggs, who's doing very
Mhm.
well, and of course now Taylor Tannenbaum. That's a pretty good list. That's
I
not bad
know.
hosts of you've had there run there.
I don't want to talk about Taylor too much because I don't want her to leave me either.
Fair, yeah, it's fair. Fair point.
Taylor's great.
And then obviously Alex joined you a few years ago there. You've kind of been a combo there for a deal. The differences of doing studio on site, like you're going to do at championship week here at the ACC championship, versus doing it in this regular studio. I also want to mention both of you will have a reaction show from the studio Sunday night on selection night on ACC Network. So I certainly encourage people to check that out. But tell me the differences and the adjustments you have to make being on site doing analyst work between games and before games and things versus being in the studio climate.
And it's so much better to be there. I mean, it's like calling games from home. You lose that feel of the stadium, the environment, the conversations you get to have with teams when they're not playing or coaches, and, looking off to the side and see how people are interacting or coaches having conversation with certain players, or, you just get that 360 view of what's going on, and almost that 40 because you get the feeling too. Like you get to feel the elements, the excitement, which teams are walking off the bus with a little pep in their step, which teams look a little, nervous or feel the pressure. You get the feel of things that you don't get when you're sitting in like a sterile studio watching it on a screen. So I'm so grateful that we get to be there because it certainly helps tell the story of what's happening on the field.
Let's talk about some of these teams now. Obviously, the brackets are not set. There's still series going on this weekend, but we'll kind of give a kind of brush through it here, an early look. And let's start at the top. Florida State and Duke. We know they're going to be 1-2. Duke is already in the clubhouse, coming off the series win against Clemson. They're at 20-4. I want to start with them, and we'll talk about I know you and Alex went over in your podcast this week about awards and pitcher of the year, and it's probably, I think you both kind of are on the same page. You think it'll be Francis or Danley of Florida State. Can I make a case that Cassidy Curd is the most valuable pitcher in the conference? Because I feel like with her, Duke is a different team than without her. With her, I think they're a World Series contender. They can win the ACC championship based on how she pitched, and I think we saw that on Sunday night against Clemson. She told me she feels good. I think they're motivated to make more history with that senior class. Can I make that case? Maybe she doesn't have the numbers to win ACC Pitcher of the Year this year, but I could argue she's the most valuable pitcher. Am I off? Am I on with something there?
I think you're right on. I think even with a Cassidy Curd that's not at her best as well. Like when Cassidy Curd is Cassidy Curd, this team can beat anybody in the country. And you see the games that she doesn't throw and how much their offense really has to step up, which they have, but they really, feel more comfortable with Cassidy Curd in the circle because of how good she is. And they don't have to score the 14 runs to win with her, throwing like she can. And you mentioned taking Cassidy Curd out of the lineup. She was dealing with, some ailments as every pitcher does this time of year. And they had to bring in a pitcher that hadn't pitched in college all year long in KK Mathis. And I think that just tells you, without Cassidy Curd, they had to get creative. They had to make some unusual moves. And I tip my hat to KK Mathis, man. She is a competitor, and what she did when called upon in those moments was great. But that's just a testament to how important Cassidy Curd is in this lineup and how much they really rely on her. And for this team to make a run back to Oklahoma City, you're exactly right. The importance of Cassidy Curd cannot be overstated.
How do you think Marissa Young will use her in the ACC tournament? Because that's going to be tricky back-to-back days, and you want to keep her healthy for the regionals, etc. But on the other hand, I know that group wants to win an ACC championship. So that's going to be very fascinating. And that's going to be some of the plot lines I think you and Alex will be talking about all week is how does the team handle their pitching staffs, where in some cases you're not sure who's their number two.
Yeah, I think they have a huge benefit of having this week off. I mean, they're in finals, which is great for them to be able to focus on their schoolwork, but also focus on recovery and rest, especially for Cassidy Curd having, was it going to be like almost 2 weeks off? We're getting there, and that's going to be huge for her. I think she also needs to stay in reps and routine of throwing. Maybe she doesn't throw day one. Getting that first round bye is huge to save her arm as well. But I don't think you can take the competitive nature out of anybody at Duke. I mean, they are dogs. You see how they play, and that starts from the top. Marissa Young wants to win every single game that they lace up for and step onto the field. So, maybe she doesn't throw the first game, but I mean, they could match up against Georgia Tech and Notre Dame. And if you don't have your best against Georgia Tech, they're going to sneak up on someone. So, that will be interesting to see if they're playing big picture or if they're playing to win today.
I would agree with that, and their offense is tremendous. Jess Oakland has been playing like the Big Ten Player of the Year that she was at Minnesota after, kind of getting off to a slow start, had some injuries she dealt with early in the season there with Duke. Overall, they are one of 6 teams, as we talk on Wednesday here, to have over 20 wins against the top 50 RPI teams. One of 6. They have 12 top 25 RPI teams, and yet people are still sleeping on them a little bit. I don't really get it. They know this. They get it. They use that as a chip on their shoulder. I've talked to their staff. They're aware of that. They feel they don't get the shine that they deserve. How would you compare this Duke team to the team that made it to the World Series a couple of years ago?
I think offensively, they're better. And I think with Gabriella Shattuck breaking into that lineup, the freshman, now behind the plate, her power is coming through in a big way she's in the lineup behind Tyrena Jones, Layla Lamar, Jess Oakland, KK Mathis, and you throw her powerful bat in there. I mean, it's just deeper with power too. And the veteran Deanna Jennings and Amina Vega at the top. I mean, this is probably the best offensive lineup. And we wondered, how are you going to replace Anna Gold? Like, who's going to be that person? And then Tyrena comes in and breaks her home run record. So they were able to do that through the portal. So I think this offense is definitely deeper than it was when they went to the World Series. I think in the circle, they had Jayla Wright and Cassidy Curd. Right now, they have Cassidy Curd, and then they're going to have to piece some things together behind her. I think that's a big difference there, too. But I don't think that's an unusual case in this year in softball. I think a lot of teams have one pitcher, and then they have to try and figure out what to do behind that. But Duke has the offense to back it up when they do have to piece some things together. And I think a lot of people have rode Duke off because of that 9-9 start. And I don't think that's fair. I get it. But if you look at their schedule, they flew down to Florida, came home, went back to Florida, came home, went out to California, came home. And two of those losses they had to ECU and Boston were right after that Tuesday after they came back from Mary Nutter. So they were fatigued, they were worn out, and I know every game matters, but they were tired at the beginning of the year. Now we're seeing what a well-rested and a lineup can do.
And recently they just beat Tennessee, who's a team that's in the mix for the top 8 seed. And to me, one of the things I've always disagreed with the committee on, and I've talked to the committee chairperson on the podcast the last 6 years, is head-to-head. They don't put as much weight on it, maybe, that we think they should as regular people. Like, to me, if it was up to me, Duke would be ahead of Tennessee. The resumes are very similar. It's not like, one is clearly one over the other. Duke has actually beat them head-to-head. I would have Duke as the edge over Tennessee. The committee doesn't look at it that way, so that may not play out that way. But I do think if Duke wins the ACC tournament, I think they have a big case to be a top 8 seed.
I agree. I think their resume is nice. You take away that loss to ECU, who ECU is not having a terrible year either, but that's probably the big glaring factor on their resume. But I think they deserve it. I mean, especially if, like you said, they run the ACC tournament or even make it to the championship game, I really do think they're a top 8 seed. You look at the teams they've played. I think only Texas, Oklahoma, A&M, and one other team has more top 25 RPI wins than they do. So I think the case is there for Duke to be a top 8 seed, but we've seen in the past that the selection committee doesn't really give them the benefit of the doubt. But hey, all they can do is take care of their business, right?
Well, and they've won on the road before in a super, so they'll be ready regardless, whatever they get dealt with on that. Let's talk Seminoles. If Florida State sweeps Boston College this weekend, they win the ACC regular season title outright. If they only win 2 out of 3 against BC, they share the title. We won't get into the whole scenarios on that. That's a long podcast in itself. But still, there is some pressure on Florida State. I think they're comfortably a host. They're kind of a mystery of where they're going to be hosting. The metrics, some metrics like them, some don't. What's your thoughts on this Seminoles team with Issa Torres leading the way offensively? And now it seems like they found themselves pitching wise.
You know, Issa Torres, we could talk about her all day long. I think if the season ended today, she should be the National Player of the Year because it's the player of the year. It's not just the most home runs you can hit. She's playing shortstop at an elite school and hasn't committed an error all year long. She steals bases. She hits home runs. She can bunt for a hit. I mean, and she's chasing a record that's been around since 1994 that I don't think anybody ever thought would be broken. But that's my Issa Torres for National Player of the Year pitch. But I think they have figured out their pitching. It's going to be Jazzy and Danley, and I think they work really well together. They're very different. Jazzy right-handed, Ashton left-handed. Jazzy spinny, floaty, changes speeds. Ashton Danley hard up and down, can change speeds. And I think Ashton Danley has really proven herself in big moments. Like Jazzy will get the start, and then if things start to get a little haywire, Lonnie has someone she can look to that knows that can shut it down. And not many teams have a shutdown pitcher off their bench they can rely on. So I think finally figure out their pitching, maybe not as deep as they would have liked, but I think they went to last night or Tuesday night in that Florida game. They went with their 3-4 pitchers and to see what they could do. And I think that was important to see that against a Florida team. They could have easily gone Jazzy and Ashton, but they know what they have and they're thinking big picture as Lonnie always does and wants to see how Marley goes against a Florida. And I think that was really good for them to see. And it was a really close, good game with Marley holding her own out there.
Yeah, I'm with you on Issa Torres. I think she's the best player in the sport. I think she's their front-runner National Player of the Year. I think she's got an edge, in my opinion, over a Kendall Wells, over a Woolery, Megan Grant. Probably those are your names you're probably looking at for the National Player of the Year. And because she's doing it on both sides, offense and defense, as you mentioned, setting the record there. Is this Seminoles team capable of getting to Oklahoma City?
I think so. I think obviously if they're going to get paired up with a team that plays in the national championships like they have the past 2 years, it's going to be a harder road. But I think they have more than one way to score runs. They can do it with speed. They're aggressive on the bases. They can hit gaps. They can hit the long ball when they need to. They're fundamentally sound on defense. I think they have all the tools to get you to Oklahoma City. And again, I think it gets lost that some teams match up better against other teams, and that's why the seeding is so important to see where they match up against it. Because if they're going to match up against a team that has a buzzsaw in the circle, then their pitching staff isn't going to just give up one run most of the time. So they need to find ways to score, even if it is a buzzsaw, and that's why I like them because they can score in a different ways, and I think that makes them special and kind of separates them.
Let's talk a little bit about Virginia Tech and Stanford, because I think those two teams are sort of so intriguing because you really don't know on a given day which team is getting. You're getting the peak version that could be a top 10, top 12 team in the country, or a team that you're kind of shaking your head, man, did they forget how to play softball? These are two teams in the mix for the top 4 ACC seeds right now. Louisville also is in that mix. We'll talk about them a little bit, but give me your thoughts on the Hokies and the Cardinals, because this is a big week for both. Virginia Tech will play Syracuse to wrap up the regular season. Stanford's in the clubhouse, but they both have a lot at stake in Charlottesville when it comes to a chance to host.
Yeah, I think if Virginia Tech sweeps this weekend, then them and Stanford are going to be tied, and then we'll have to go into that long list of things to break that tiebreaker. We'll let the research and the people that get paid money to do that. But no, Virginia Tech, it's almost frustrating because we saw this happen to them last year. They were sitting comfortably as a host seed, then they lose the last 2 out of the 3 ACC series, one of them being to Pitt, and then the same weekend this year they dropped the series to Georgia Tech. And I don't know with Virginia Tech right now, because my big question mark is in the circle. And going into that Georgia Tech series, Bree Carrico and Emma Razarone were the best 1-2 punch in the ACC in the circle. I mean, they were rolling, and you had a Friday starter, you had a Saturday starter, and then they could split Sunday, and they were just taking care of business. But those numbers for them have inflated. They've kind of fallen off. They haven't been going complete games. So I'm interested to see. I think those two are going to have a big impact on what they can do. And then on the Stanford side, I think Stanford's trending in the right direction. I think that's due to being healthy. I like what I've seen from Alyssa Houston and Zoe in the circle. I think last year their walks and hit by pitches and wild pitches were a huge, huge problem and reason why they didn't get past Oregon. But this year that's really been cleaned up. I think they have a great offense that hasn't been performing exactly like I had expected, but I mean, they can still swing it. They had that sweep over Florida State, so I think they're trending in the right direction after some big question marks during the year. Stanford early on in the season was my favorite to make it to Oklahoma City. Just based on they're bringing back 7 all ACC players on this roster, but then they had the series lost Louisville and Notre Dame, and but then they swept Florida State. So I think those two teams are trending in different directions, but Virginia Tech can definitely right that ship because they have the talent in the circle.
And those are teams that are capable of getting to the ACC championship game. And that's why when this bracket is finalized, I'm very interested to see how it comes out. Because, for example, let's say Stanford is the 4 seed and they get Virginia Tech potentially in a quarterfinal. Let's say they get Florida State in the semifinal and they win those 2 games and get to the championship, play a Duke, for example. You win that, you're telling me Stanford won't host in that scenario? Like that, there's a route there where a Stanford or a Vodtech can make a run and scream right back into hosting, because there's going to be teams like SEC teams and even teams in the Big Ten that are going to lose early in their conference tournaments. That opens the door for potentially a Stanford or a Virginia Tech in the ACC. We've seen it happen in the past, and it might repeat itself. It sounds to me like you like the Cardinal here as a sleeper to make a run.
I do. I really do. I think they have the offense to do that. I think the pitching is healthy. Alyssa Houston missed some time and she's back in the lineup. Ava Gall behind the plate missed some time. She's back in the lineup consistently. I think this is a Stanford team with one game at a time, a different team each day, that their pitching can really get them going. And I just don't, history tells me not to be too high on Virginia Tech in this time of year, even though put them on paper and Alyssa Houston and Zoe versus Emma Mazzarone and Bree Carrico. I mean, those are pretty good matchups. But yeah, I really like the way that Stanford's playing, and it's all about momentum. Am I saying Virginia Tech can't gain that back? No, absolutely not. But right now, Stanford is the team with the momentum.
Yeah, and again, if one of them gets to that championship game, I think they're in the mix to host in that situation there, especially if they win it. We've seen that where a team goes on and wins the conference title and ends up being in the top 16. So I think that's something to watch throughout the week if one of those 2 teams in particular can make that run. Because I have them both right now in the top 20 seeding-wise, which puts you in that conversation to host, which is where you want to be with that. Now, the other team that's saying, hey, what about us, is Louisville. Maybe the biggest surprise of the ACC this year. Nobody really knew what to expect from it. I think their expectations were low by people outside of the program. I personally think Holly April's the coach of the year. I know you said that on the pod. I think she's done an incredible job with this group. I think they're a fun team to watch. They play to the last out. Ask Stanford about that. Ask Indiana about that. They just don't give in, and they are a team that, as they play NC State this weekend, has a chance to be the 3 seed. They will be no worse than a 4 or 5 seed. What's been your thoughts on this Cardinal team and the job Holly April's done?
Look, I'm one of those people that didn't have high expectations of Louisville. I'll admit that, especially with Char Lorenz, their big bat transferring out. Like, what were they going to do this year? And I love that they stayed true to their identity and they embraced their identity. When everybody else is hitting 90, 100 home runs this year, they're staying who they are. They're playing with speed. They're moving base to base. They're stealing bases. They're hitting triples. They're squeezing. I mean, they are frustrating the heck out of defenses because teams don't play teams like Louisville anymore. They're not prepared for that. The corners are caught off guard. And I saw Louisville play a team. They brought 5 infielders in trying to combat Chelsea Mack, and she hits right into the 3 defenders on the left side and still beats it out. So they are very frustrating to a team, especially a defense, to play against because they're not like a team that anybody faces anymore. So I think they have that advantage, and they embrace it, and they do it to the highest highest level, and they have enough pitching. They have 4 or 5 arms that they can go to and trust. And I think Holly April has done an incredible job of identifying what kind of talent she has and putting her players in the best position to be successful.
No, she really has, and it's got a good group, good leadership there. I'm really interested to see how they do, in this ACC championship tournament this week, but also who they get paired up with in the regionals, because they could be a tough out. A team that in a bracket with the right draw there, they might make some noise and be a team that somebody's not going to be happy to see in the regionals. Virginia, the host team, is the 6th seed there. I want to ask about them. What do you think about them? A lot of experience in that group. They're going to have the home field advantage. This is something they, as I mentioned earlier, they are built towards this moment. How do you think they'll respond?
I think Virginia as a whole on the second half of the season, probably not excited about what's happened. I think that their 5 seniors, all being from Virginia, are going to take this opportunity of playing one last time at Palmer Park, and they're going to play with something to prove. They're not just playing for their team, their university, they're playing for the state of Virginia, which is huge. I think they're going to go out there and be the gritty Virginia team we've seen when they're playing their best. I think that the 4 pitchers they have in the circle are really great. Taylor Smith, the freshman, if you haven't had a chance to watch her, take a look. She just threw a no-hitter last week. I have been very impressed with her. I'm hoping that Joanna Harding will give pitchers a longer leash. I know she's big on pitching by committee and has a set plan for her pitchers, but I love that she let Taylor Smith stay in for that no-hitter, where she's been pulled in the past this year with a no-hitter on. But I do think that's given all of her pitchers a ton of experience coming into postseason, which I think will bode well for them. But I think Virginia has a lot of pride in their school, in their field, and what they're doing. So, they're gonna have their best play out right now. I think they have a lot to play for, and I think a lot of people have kind of gotten off the Virginia bandwagon that they were on early in the season. But I think this conference tournament may be the time that you keep an eye on them.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting the draw they get. They may get something where they can make a run here. Next thing you know, they're in the semifinal with the crowd behind them. We'll see how that goes with their Clemson is kind of right now in that 7th seed. And your facial reaction is perfect because that describes me and Vic every week on the podcast trying to talk about Clemson. And then we just kind of talk in circles because we really don't know what to say about Clemson because we haven't figured out Clemson, who they are. Have you?
No, not. I watched them in person and I saw them play terrific, and then I just saw them play dead. But I do think since that loss to Pitt and they shook up the lineup a little bit, that they are more consistent towards the end than they have been. But one thing that really concerns me is that Sierra Manis left game 1 against Duke in the 3rd inning in a close game, and that doesn't happen. You just don't pull Sierra Manis in a close game, or they haven't all year. But then to see her the rest of the weekend and even have to go and put Julia Noller into pitch, who has not pitched her entire career, hasn't pitched since high school, was kind of a red flag to me that maybe something's going on with Sierra Manis. I don't know that for a fact. Maybe she just needs a little extra rest because she's thrown a lot this year. I think 159 innings and has thrown almost 200 innings at Upstate the past 2 seasons. So she's got a lot of wear and tear on that arm. But offensively, I really liked what I saw against Clemson. And then Kylie Johnson, and she was a superstar last year at the ACC tournament. She was a superstar in their win over Duke. She robbed a home run, cut down a runner at the plate, hit a home run. So it's those unsuspecting names for Clemson that seem to really break out this time of year. But like you said, you really don't know which Clemson team's going to show up day in and day out. And with a single elimination tournament, they don't have the opportunity to not show up one day. And, if Sierra Manis is out or not 100%, then they've got some work to do.
Yeah, the pitching just hasn't clicked like last year where they hit on Basinger, for example, and they did a great job. I mean, Citron, I don't think we got what we expected from her in the circle this year. I think we expected more from her as a two-way player, kind of like what FSU's getting from Danley, right? That's just things have not kind of bounced right for Coach Rittman this year in that regard.
Yeah, I think Centron, the ACC Freshman of the Year last year, she dealt with injury. I think been hit with the injury bug too, big time. I think Centron had injury coming into this season. Abby Dunning midway through dealt with some injury issues. Hames dealt with some injury issues. We finally saw her for a little bit, but it didn't look like the same picture I saw in March. I really do think the injury bug hit Clemson hard in the circle this year. And I think maybe from a morale standpoint for this team, it really affected them offensively. But it's that time of year where it's one game at a time. So maybe this team can really focus on one game at a time, get their bats back. But Kylie Chanel at shortstop, Eric, wow, she has been so good. And then Kylie Johnson outfield. It's going to be somebody that we're not expecting, I think, to really for Clemson for them to make a run.
All right, Clemson's the type of team nothing would surprise me if they could lose in the opening round of the ACC tournament, or they can make a run all the way to the final, right? Like that's what it would be fitting with them this year.
DraftKings would hate to put a line on Clemson softball.
It's wild, but I mean, you can make a case. Could you say 6 to 7 teams in the ACC can get to the final? It wouldn't surprise you. Is that a fair number?
I think so. I mean, and throw Georgia Tech in that mix too. I mean, I think they've played so many close games and came up short. I think maybe 11 1 or 2 run games, and they just came up on the wrong end. And a couple of those go the other way. We're talking completely different way about the Yellow Jackets. So from like Virginia Tech, Stanford, Georgia Tech, Duke, Florida State, Clemson. This is probably the most excited I've been for an ACC tournament.
Oh, okay. Yeah, very deep league. Since you brought up Georgia Tech here, you are a podcast co-host after all. You know where I was thinking. I was going ahead because Georgia Tech's interesting. They are on the bubble. They won 2 out of 3 at Virginia Tech a couple weeks ago, but then got swept by Florida State. The metrics have kind of turned on them a little bit. They have some great wins. They have some losses. You kind of shake your head. Their schedule strength is very strong. I have them in. That being said, depending on how the bracket plays out, it looks like they might get Notre Dame, for example, in the opening round in an 8-9 game. If that is how it plays out, and it looks like it is, they need to win that game. I don't know if they can afford to lose that game and stay in the field. What's your thoughts on Aileen Morales' Yellow Jackets team?
They're a gritty team, and I think you're exactly right. I think they have to win that game. I don't think it'll hurt them. Help them to win it, but it will definitely hurt them if they do not win that game. And that's a Notre Dame team that they swept first weekend of ACC play. So they've had their chances with them and they've come out on top. But I think this team plays with a lot of, you can't really put a number on grit and fight. They're a mature team. I think Reese Hunter behind the plate is having a career year. She's a difference maker than Willer. I mean, and Grayson Tucker. I think they have so many really good players. And then they brought in Madeline Johnson in the circle, who's become an ace. I think that Georgia Tech has all the pieces. It's just when they click at the right time. And I think the fact that they've played in so many 1 and 2 run ball games and gone into extra innings, and that's only going to benefit them in this kind of tournament where it's win or go home. Everything's on the line for these teams. So I think, they hate losing those games, but I think they're better for it being in those type of competitions.
They have 8 wins against the top 50 RPI, which is good. They've played 28 games against the top 50. They've played a very difficult schedule. They have 3 quad 3 losses. It's shaky. I just beat Notre. If you win your first game, I think they're in, especially this year with the bubble being a little soft. I'd like to think they're in. You lose to Notre Dame, it's going to be a long week till Selection Sunday for Georgia Tech. North Carolina, they have work to do, and I mean a lot of work. It's been a while. First of all, shout out to Emily Leggett, who was named to the USA Softball Top 25 finalist for National Player of the Year. Amina Vega of Duke also named to the National Player of the Year. We haven't mentioned her. Oh, by the way, the best second baseman in the sport gets in there. Issa Torres also named on that list. But Leggett, Carolina could score with the best of them. They just haven't been able to pitch this year. They've lost a lot of shootouts. Only 2 top 50 wins. They're going to need to make a run here to have a realistic shot, I think, to make the NCAA tournament. What do you see from the Tar Heels? I know you follow them closely. What has gone wrong for North Carolina?
Well, unfortunately, that's not a hard question to answer. It's the pitching. I mean, they were one strike away from being South Carolina in a double-digit game and then couldn't get out of it, gave up the tying 2-run base hit. But it's been the pitching again at Virginia Tech, too. They needed some of those wins. They needed the South Carolina win. They needed 1 or 2 at Virginia Tech, and they were so close each time. Virginia Tech had a walk-off on them. But, it's really been in the circle it's failed them. And I had so much hope last year seeing what Kinneret did in the circle at the end of the year in the ACC tournament, and was excited for her to come back this year. And, she just hasn't been the Kinneret that we saw last year. And they've just been trying really hard to piece some things together in the circle. But, when you're giving up 14 runs, it's really hard to win. And their offense, I hate the fact that kind of offense, unless they make an incredible run, is not going to see the postseason. And it's really disappointing. But, what Emily Leggett has done, I don't want it to be overshadowed by, the lack of pitching, the lack of big wins. And even like Sanaa Thompson, I mean, she's one of the most athletic players I've ever seen. She's putting up an incredible year once again. They just have so many people in that lineup offensively that have done great things. They just, the pitching hasn't been able to allow them to stay in ball games.
They were right there against Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
Could have won a game or two there. The South Carolina game, I remember I was on the air when Alex Powers had me try to guess on the air. What do you think the score is for North Carolina, South Carolina? I'm like, maybe 10-8, whatever. Like 14-14. I'm like, what? Oh, okay. Yeah. But those are games
and they did that against Jory Hurd too. I mean, they can hit. They can hit any kind of pitching. It's so. I'm sure it's frustrating in that clubhouse too for the pitchers. They're not out there trying to give up runs and walk hitters or pipe balls, and it's got to be frustrating for the coaches and the players. But I don't want to overlook what they've done in the box either.
No, and it's a team that, look, you almost if you're North Carolina, you actually want a tough draw, because that's the only way you can get resume wins. Like if they get Clemson in the opening round in a 7-10 game, that's actually good, because that's a quad 1 game. You win that, you play the 2 seed, maybe pull an upset. Now you're making your metrics go up. Now you become the conversation. You get some help elsewhere. Now you're back in the mix for the tournament. But that's what they're going to need, because all their metrics are in the high 40s, 50s. They're going to be kicking themselves, thinking back to that Virginia series where they had could have won that series and somehow lost that last game, which I think it took a piece of my life away, following that game very closely. Think back to the South Carolina game you referenced. They had chances in the Virginia Tech. I mean, it's just unbelievable how there's a lot of what ifs for them if they don't make a run here in the ACC tournament.
Yeah, they had every opportunity with the end of their schedule. It was one of the hardest schedules the last 3 weeks of any team, with the Duke, Florida State, Virginia Tech, South Carolina in there, and they had so many opportunities to get those big wins. They did get one against Duke, but that was it for them.
Give me a player that is the most underrated player that nobody talks about in this ACC that you're looking forward to seeing in this tournament. You're like, hey, watch this player this week in the ACC tournament. You may not have heard of her. You may not have seen her play, but she is a big-time player and is a player that's going to help that team win games in the postseason.
That's a tough one. When you're asking that question, I'm just running through a list of different players. I'm thinking about Bree and Chelsea Mack from Louisville, and I'm thinking, player Willer and Reese Hunter from Georgia Tech. But I keep going back to Kylie Chanel at Clemson, the FAU transfer, the shortstop. If you like defense and you want to see somebody that hasn't been talked about a lot, Kylie Chanel is one of the most fundamentally sound shortstops I've seen, but also a shortstop that can make the incredible, insane plays. So keep an eye on Kylie Chanel. Been a big fan of hers all year long.
It's a good pick. I like Chelsea Mack was going to be my pick there for Louisville. I
feel like people know Chelsea Mack.
You think so? Okay.
Maybe not. Maybe because I'm just so immersed in it. But if you don't, definitely.
I feel like a lot of people have slept on Louisville a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think we saw that Stanford series, and I think the reaction was, what's wrong with Stanford? Well, as it turns out, it's actually what's right with Louisville, maybe, in retrospect, right?
I think I slept on Louisville until maybe even after that Stanford series. I think I may have been in the same boat. I mean, this was a team that was one game above 500 last year. But then you watch them against Indiana. You brought up that game. You watch them against Stanford, and you watch it just how they play. So yeah, I guess I've been more invested as of late. But Chelsea Mack's so exciting to watch. I mean, she's not a big power hitter at all. She's a slapper from the left side, but she leads the conference in stolen bases. She's top 5, I think, in the nation in stolen bases, number 1 in Power 4 schools. I know that, but even if she's just getting a little base hit, it's basically a double because she's just going to steal second base. So she's a lot of fun to watch.
She is, no doubt about that. Is there a team here we have not talked about that might be in the ACC tournament you want to bring up and say, hey, don't sleep on them. Don't be surprised if they pull an upset here.
Yeah, I think we've addressed a lot of teams, Eric.
Well, Notre Dame Notre Dame is one we haven't talked about. They won a series against Stanford. They might be the reason why Stanford doesn't host. Is the irony of that. But that's a
good point.
And they've played better quietly in conference after a rough non-conference.
Yeah, Michaela Castor, I mean, she's really come along. We've known she's been really good, but just the second year with new coaching staff, beating Stanford at Stanford, huge deal for them. They're starting to put the pieces together. And I think when they played Florida State, I talked to Alex about that series, and she's like, Notre Dame's good. Like, they have some really good pieces there. They've just made some head scratching mistakes on defense and things that can easily be cleaned up. And yeah, I think you're right. The Notre Dame team could definitely surprise someone. Thank you for bringing them up. It's just this ACC from 1 through 6, 7, 8. I think Notre Dame's sitting, where are they, an 8 seed right now? Yeah, that's a tough 8 seed in this tournament.
Yeah, when they could play Georgia Tech, and Georgia Tech might need that game, as we talked about earlier. So that's a big 8-9 game. How do you? These last year, the ACC set the record most NCAA tournament bids. Looks like we're going to be pretty close to that, if not matching it. How do you compare the league now and where it is in the last couple of years? This seems to be we're at a peak of the ACC in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I think it's always been, Florida State's league, right? You look at past champions, it's been Florida State. You had Georgia Tech in there a couple of times. You had Virginia Tech in there a couple of times. But the addition of Clemson and Duke been massive because they've come out of the gate just running. And then I think the top has been established, but it's that middle part now of the ACC that is really being elevating this program, with Louisville and Virginia coming up strong. Even UNC having a tough year in the circle, but they're a tough team too. I think it's just that middle third of the ACC that has improved so much, and that's why this conference is on the up and up.
No doubt about it, and it should be an exciting tournament. It'll be in Charlottesville. All the coverage will be on ACC Network all week. Brittany McKinney will be a big part of that. This was fun, buddy. This was always good to catch up. Tell the audience about you and Alex and the podcast, too. I know the newest episode's coming out. You're going to do one from Charlottesville as well.
Yeah, we just had one come out this morning. We broke down what we saw in the ACC. We handed out some ACC awards. We break down what we saw the past weekend and what to look forward to, and trends, and who's trending the right way, who's not trending the right way, and trying to get an idea of what's happening in the ACC. And it's been more difficult than ever. So hear us banter back and forth on Wednesday mornings on Up the Coast podcast.
There we go. Up the Coast podcast. You can check it out on YouTube. You can check it out on the Apple podcast feeds. I'm not going to spoil it, but Alex and Brittany do get into an argument over a specific ACC award. I'm not going to spoil it. I want everybody to tune in, and then tune in to them on ACC Network coverage all week on site from Charlottesville with the very talented Taylor Tannenbaum there as well. Brittany, always a pleasure. I know it's a busy time as you're getting ready for postseason. Thanks so much for coming on the show as always. Oh, you're one of our favorites, and have fun. I'll be following you closely, all right?
Eric, I don't know when you sleep, but I am so appreciative to what you do, from your bracketology to bringing in so many different players and coaches to interview. Like, our sport does not get the coverage without you. So I really appreciate you and what you do and how much work goes into it. And it comes from a really genuine spot. So thank you.
Thank you, and take care of Alex for me. All right, take care.
Hey, we'll do our best.